Hello everyone, welcome to the session Programming for Problem Solving. Myself Navya, I'm an assistant professor from the Department of CSIT, Navya Institutions of Technology. In today's session, we are going to see about types of function. In the last session, we have seen what is a function, what is the need of a function, and how we are going to use a function. Here in this, simply an overview of a function. Here in this, we are going to see what are the types of functions and what are library functions, what are user defined functions, and what are the advantages of user defined functions here. Coming to the types of functions. In C programming, there are two types of functions. The functions have been classified into again two. The first one is predefined function or system defined functions or library functions. And second type of functions are user-defined functions. Here we can call the name itself the system design, predefined, and the library functions. So coming to these functions, library functions are the functions which are already defined in a C library and which we can use it ready-madely. Okay, so the predefined functions are known as system defined functions. The system defined function is defined as follows. The function those definition is defined by the system is called as system defined functions, which is already present in C language, that C library. So it is called as system defined functions. So the implementation of the system defined functions is already defined in the systems. So here from the starting we are writing a small programs using some header files like stdio.h, conio.h, mat.h, string.h header files. So we are using these library functions here. So in this library functions, are already defined in C library. Okay, library functions or user predefined functions are the functions already defined in a C library is called as library functions. So here C library, how our library has been designed. So when you enter inside the library, what happens? You will see some racks, right? So there we can have CSC rack, IT department racks, and EC department racks, and some triply mech, like that. So the library was divided into different sections. In that, again the CSC, we are having different subject books. In every subject, again you will have different author books. Similarly, the C library also was defined into different header file. So how the department racks are there? Here you will have different header files. In this header file, you will have different functions. Coming to this is C library. These are the header file, and you will already define some functions which we are going to use it ready-madely. Okay, these functions. When it comes to stdio.h, this is one of the header file in C. So standard input output dot header file. Okay, what you have in the stdio.h, we already discussed this in an executable statements. So similarly, we will have the input functions. Formatted functions and unformatted functions, and formatted functions again divided into two, input functions, output functions. Similarly, unformatted also again divided into two, input and output functions. Here in the input functions, we will have the scanf function, and output function we are having printf function. In order to use the printf and scanf function, we has to include this particular stdio.h in C. So we has to include stdio.h. So why we are using this? First point, is it necessary to use stdio.h? If you don't use stdio.h, what happens? So if you don't use stdio.h also, you can write the program. Then what was the difference? So for every function, which is, if you want to print something on the screen, you have to write some 10 lines of code. Instead of writing some lines of code, some n number of lines of code, we will secure that particular n lines of code in a function, and simply we will call using a single function call, as we discussed in the last session. What is mean by function call? Here we will simply call the function. So similarly, how you are defining this one, so they already in the C library, they has defined to print something on the screen. They has involved that they has written the code, and they secured those code inside the header files. From there, you has to use, if I want to use a printf function, if I want to use a scanf function, I has to include the header file to my program. So in order to include this header file, we are going, this is called as predefined function. In order to use these functions, we has to include header files. Simple. So let me go with a real life example. For example, if I'm going to a shopping mall, what you will do? If I want to buy a dress, so similarly you will buy the dress. So you will see all the dresses which are ready-madely is there, which is already stitched, isn't it? So you directly, you will go and you will take your size and you will wear it ready-madely. Similarly, the predefined functions are already defined in C library. They already n number of header files are there. We include in our program, and we will use it as like a ready-made dresses. So these are some of the points we need to note. So the system defined functions are declared in header files, which I already said, and these are implemented in .dll. So dynamic link memory, link library. So these are implemented in .dll files, and the system defined functions respective header file must be included. I already said you. In order to use those functions, we has to include header files to our program. And let us go with another example. So mat.h header file. In mat.h header file, we are having a number of functions, like such as square root function. In order to do the square root of the function, you have to use sqrt. I want to do the power of, I can go with, for example, if power of a function will do 2 into 2, I want to calculate 2 into 2. So I can write 2 into 2 directly. If I want to calculate 2 power 3, 2 into 3, 2 into 3. 2 into 2 into 2. This is equals to 2 power 3. If I want to calculate 2 power 10, should I give? I can't give like this in the C programming, right? So I have to give like this, 2 into 2 into 2 into, and so on up to 10 times I have to give. Instead, similarly, I can use directly power function, power of 2 comma 10. So it will return you the 2 power 10 value. If I want to give 2 power 100, I can give 2 power 32. I can give like this, anything. So it will calculate. This function is already defined in a mat.h header file. Simply we has to include mat.h header file to our program, and we can use the square root, power, and absolute, floor, seal. So many more functions like what tan theta functions, like all mathematical related, all the functions are has been defined in the mat.h. So this is how we will use the user defined functions in C language. Okay. Then coming to the user-defined functions. We have seen what is predefined functions. Predefined functions are functions which are already defined in C. So we are using it like a ready-made process. So what is meant by user-defined function? User-defined functions are the functions which we define our own code, which is known as user-defined function. Simply, we can define it as a function whose definition is defined by the user is known as user-defined functions. That means we has to implement the code. Okay, so in a function, main is implemented by user. So main is a user-defined function. Main is not a predefined function because we are not using, there is no code which is already defined. So we are writing our own code, right? So main is a user-defined function. Okay, so here when it comes to concepts of functions, a function call is known as calling function, and the function definition is known as called function. Simple words. So a function calling other function, that function is said to be calling function, which is called, that is called as called functions. So here we'll go with the example anyway, but here we can go with some point of view. When we make a function call, the execution control jumps from the calling function to called function, and after executing the called function, the execution control comes back to the calling function from called function. So when the control jumps to the calling function to called function, it can carry the some values, data values, which we call it as parameters, or we can call it as arguments also. And when it come back, it can return a single value. We can call it as return value. That means the data values can be transferred from one function to another function. So we will call it as parameters, and it can return a value after completion of certain operations, or after performing certain tasks. It can return some value. So it is called as return value. So let us go with a small example program. Okay. Hash include stdio.h. I will write a small program here. Int sum of int a comma int b. I just want to go with a into a plus b into b value. Okay, main function. If this is my function, I just want to add a into a plus b into b. So whatever the values, you are providing two values. So how many functions are there, or n number of functions to be there? But there should be only one main function in C programming, as well as in any type of programming languages. You should have only one main function. Okay, in one main function, and the execution always starts from the main function only. Okay, we are reading two values, x and y values, and using scanner, if I'm giving 2 and 3 are two values. So here this is a function call. This is a function call. So here in this we are calling the function. The control will goes from here to here. And what are the x and y values are there? The copy of values will be copied into a and b values, and it will perform the operations in that particular function. So what are the operations? A into a plus b into 2 into 2 plus 3 into 3. So which is 4 plus 9. 13. It will return 13 value. The 13 value will be displayed on the output screen. Let us go with this example program. Int sum of int x comma int a comma int b. It will return a into a plus b into b value. And in the main function, we have scanf %d comma address of x and address of y. Now we will write the printf the value %d. I just want value equals to %d comma sum of x comma y. So I'm calling with x and y values. So this is my program. When I go with this, when I execute it, see, I have to provide two values, 5 and 6. I'm providing two values, 5 and 6 here. So when I execute 5 into 5, 5 is a 25, 25 plus 6 are 36. So the total value of sum equals to 61. So I have got correct. So this is how it will happen. So the control will start. It will first execute the main program only. It will complete this. Here is a function call. We are providing two variables x and y. The values will be received in copied to a and b values, and here whatever the operations it was performing, it will return some value. And what type of value you are returning? Integer. So here we has to provide the integer as return type. This is a sample program for function. So in the next session, we are going to see the types of functions, types of function prototypes and everything which is related to this one. So we will go in detail here. Here we have discussed one point which is called function and function. So here we are calling the sum of x and y. This function we are calling, right? So main function is called as called function, whereas sum function is called as calling functions. So you are passing some parameter inside the functions x and y, right? Here we are passing x and y. These x and y are called as actual parameters. You are receiving it as a and b. These are called as formal parameters. It returns some value, right? So this, what type of value it was returning, that has to mention here the type of data type. So it is called as return type. Okay. So main is calling some function. So main is called as called function, and this is calling function, and whatever the parameters you are passing is called as actual parameters. What do you receive is formal parameters. Okay. Coming to the advantages of function. Why we are using these functions? Is it necessary to use the functions? And what are the main advantages of these functions? So coming to functions. So if I want to, first point is modularity. Modularity is nothing but when we divide the complex problem into certain modules, and if we has given those modules for a number of, for example, let me go with a simple example. If I'm giving I'm giving a certain work which is of heavy task, which can do for 10 days. If I go with if I allot it for one person, what happens? The person will do it for 10 days, but if I do the same thing and I has given it to 5 people, what happens? The 5 people will share the work and they will divide the work and they will do within a less number of time. Similarly, here also it will work on the same performer. Like functions will divide the large program into smaller manageable modules. So each function will perform certain tasks, making the code easier and to understand and organize also. In order to go with the easier access as well as faster access, we are going to use the functions. So one particular advantage is modularity. Second one is reusability. If I'm writing a certain code in a function, I can use, if I was writing certain code for 10 lines of, for example, 10 lines of code, after few 10 lines of code I'm writing here, the same code I has to write here also, and after some lines I has to write the same code here also, which means some certain code I has to use for many number of times in a single program. In such cases, we will get we will take this 10 lines of code together, and instead of writing 10 plus 10 plus 10, how many times, if n into 10 number of times, 10 number of lines, instead we will write secure together in one function. Wherever you need these 10 lines of code, simply you can call it, right, with a single line. Instead of writing 10 lines every time, you will write 10 lines in at one place and we will call it for a number of times. That is code reusability. So when once a function is written, it can be reused in anywhere in the program or even in the programs also. So this avoids code duplication and saves time in the development. So this is one of the advantage. And the next one is easier debugging and maintenance. So errors can be easily fixed. If I'm having an error in a specific function, directly it won't affect the rest of the program. So only if I'm having in this particular 10 lines of code, I can go with I can fix it very easily. So that was one of the advantage. So further modifications become simple since changes in one function only, and it won't require to rewrite the entire program. If any changes happen, we can change in that particular 10 lines of code. If you are having errors, if you are having we can't if this is the case, if I'm writing the code here, if any error happens here, I have to change the entire code and it won't work. So that was one the thing. And next one is improved readability. Functions make the code more structured and readable, and it would be very easy to understand. So meaningful function names describe their purpose and helping others to understand the code very easily. So these are the 4 major advantages of functions. Coming to the summary of the session. So there are 2 types of functions. One is library function, one is user defined functions. Library functions are the functions which are defined already in C. We include those header files to our programs and we will execute that one. Whereas user defined functions are the functions which the user has to define by their own code. Like we can say the user defined functions are the functions which we have taken the cloth from the scratch and we are making our own new dress with our own decision and our own taste. That is user defined function. Coming to the advantages of function. What are the advantages of function? First one is modularity, reusability, easy to maintain, and easier debugging. So these are the 4 advantages of functions. So we have learned these topics in the session. Thank you.